Good evening, and welcome to Scotland at 7 on this, the 7th of March. I apologise for the late start to the programme this evening, having some technical difficulties with connections to Milwaukee, to Romania, and to Edinburgh from the studio in Glasgow. And of course, where's the problem? Edinburgh, always Edinburgh. Anyway, I normally say at this point, I'm Douglas MacKenzie and bringing you stories from Scotland and around the world. But we have a slightly different focus tonight. We're going to concentrate on Ukraine and on the response to Donald Trump's actions on Ukraine and Europe and Canada. And I'm pleased to have two experts to speak on this. The first in Edinburgh, a well-known face on broadcasting Scotland, Dr. Alan Flowers, who for most of his academic career specialised in the aftermath of the Chernobyl disaster, and since then has always been a strong voice for Ukraine and also for Belarus, where he's currently chairman of the Anglo-Belarus Society. Welcome, Alan.
Yes, good evening from Edinburgh.
And we have a new voice and a new face on Broadcasting Scotland tonight from Milwaukee in the United States, who will have the unenviable task of trying to explain Donald Trump to us. And this is Mark Thompson, who has 50 years of experience in media, everything from rock music to sports, and is very welcome to the program. Welcome, Mark.
Well, thank you very much, Doug. I really do appreciate that. Nice to meet you, Alan, too.
Thank you. Really nice to meet you. Looking forward to what you've got to say.
Yeah. So, as I say, a slightly different format tonight. So we will begin with the news headlines. And the UK government is planning cuts to GB Energy's funding in June's spending review, potentially reducing its 8.3 billion allocation to 5 billion, despite Labour's promises to Scotland in the 2024 general election. SNP Westminster Energy spokesperson Dave Duggan criticised Labour's cuts to GB Energy funding, saying it further undermines promises to reduce energy bills and meet net zero targets, while stressing Scotland's energy resources should benefit people in Scotland. A report by the Institute of Public Policy Research reveals tens of thousands of children in migrant families with the so-called no recourse to public funds in the UK are denied access to government-funded childcare due to their parents' immigration status. Labour leader in Scotland, Anna Sarwar, is facing questions over accusations he tried to silence senior Labour MSP Alex Rowley for opposing the two-child benefit cap. 6 Just Stop Oil protesters, including co-founder Roger Hallam, had their jail sentences reduced on appeal after the court deemed their original sentences excessive. 5 members of a far-right group linked to the Reichsbürger movement were jailed in Koblenz, Germany, for plotting a coup, kidnapping a health minister, and planning to trigger a civil war through violence and sabotage. Scottish Government Education Secretary Jenny Gilruth has confirmed over £100 million of funding for 25,000 modern apprenticeships and 2,500 foundation apprenticeships in 2025-26. Joe Griffin has been appointed Permanent Secretary to the Scottish Government starting in April 2025. He succeeds John Paul Marks and was appointed by the UK Cabinet Secretary with the First Minister's agreement. Craig Naylor has been reappointed by the Cabinet Secretary for Justice, Angela Constance, as the Chief Inspector of Constabulary in Scotland for a further 3 years. We'll move on now to our Middle East update. And at least 48,440 Palestinians have been killed and 111,845 injured in Gaza since the 7th of October 2023, according to the Gaza Health Authority. Hamas has accused Donald Trump of seeking to undermine the shaky pause in hostilities in Gaza with his latest intervention in the region, a new and fierce ultimatum telling the group to release all hostages. Hamas says Trump's threats are encouraging Israel to back out of the Gaza ceasefire. Fighting in Gaza has been halted since the 19th of January under a truce arranged with US support and Qatari and Egyptian mediators, and Hamas has exchanged 25 living Israeli hostages and 5 Thais for about 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. The remains of 8 dead Israeli hostages have also been returned. The first phase of the ceasefire ended on Saturday, and talks on the second phase are stalled. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry has issued a statement condemning the storming of 8 mosques in the city of Nablus in the northern West Bank. The Israeli army set fire to Al Nasser Mosque in the Old City, one of its most significant historical landmarks, and prevented firefighters from extinguishing the blaze, the Wafa news agency reported. The Trump administration's cuts to the US Agency for International Development, USAID, have frozen hundreds of millions of dollars in contractual payments to aid groups, including groups working in Gaza, leaving them with no funds to help fulfill the terms of the Gaza ceasefire. 2 unnamed senior officials at aid organizations told the Associated Press they did not receive any of the promised funds after spending millions of dollars on supplies and services. They said that they could not afford to continue aid operations indefinitely. Before Trump took office, USAID had roughly $446 million to disperse to partner organizations in Gaza in 2025, USAID officials said. The US State Department will use AI to review social media accounts of foreign students, revoking visas for those perceived as supporting Hamas. This follows an executive order targeting pro-Palestinian protests. Donald Trump says he has written to Iran's leaders seeking negotiations over its nuclear weapons program. In 2018, he withdrew from an international deal limiting Iran's nuclear ambitions, and as a result, Iran resumed its nuclear program, expanding its uranium stockpile. Well, there's a lot to go through there, most of which we will leave for another day, but I noticed that Trump spoke at 5 o'clock our time today, Mark, saying that there was going to be a settlement whether they liked it or not. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it was a very long press conference in the Oval Office. He was talking more or less about the inflation rate and jobs primarily, and saying it's a boost, but in reality it's not. It's actually an increase in unemployment. And I'm sure with the job cuts going on, it's going to be greater. But then he also did touch on the Middle East, saying he's going to be forcing basically the old, we're going to make this happen. We're going to get peace in the Middle East, and having overtures in regards to, you're going to be surprised on what's going to happen. And so I guess if there is a possible plan he's going to lay out, but I don't think it's a plan. I think he's just playing the cards again. But personally, there's something a brew in regards to that, because there is a lot of chatter on through all the media outlets that Russia is also talking to people in Israel and the Middle East.
Oh, interesting. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. You used the word surprising. I don't know if we can be surprised by anything coming from the US President's office.
Yeah.
We turn now to Ukraine and our usual Ukraine update on this day 1108 since Russia's full-scale invasion of the country. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said talks between Ukraine and the US on ending the war will take place in Saudi Arabia next week. In his nightly address on Thursday, Zelensky said he would travel to Saudi Arabia on Monday, and his team would stay on to hold talks with US officials. Ukraine is most interested in peace, Zelensky said. European leaders held emergency talks in Brussels, where they endorsed the plan to mobilise €800 billion for European defence. A watershed moment. The agreement was made on the same day Donald Trump said the US may not defend NATO allies who have not contributed their share of defence spending. Ukraine's energy and gas infrastructure came, quote, under massive missile and drone shelling by Russia on Friday, Ukrainian Energy Minister German Galushenko said in a post on social media. He added that Russia is trying to hurt ordinary Ukrainians by leaving people without power and heating. Ukraine's opposition leaders confirmed they had discussions with members of Trump's entourage, but denied they were part of a reported White House plot to remove Zelensky from power. Petro Poroshenko, the former Ukrainian president who lost to Zelensky in the 2019 election, said he took part in the talks, but opposed Trump's demands for wartime elections. Calling him an imperialist who seeks to rewrite history after the Russian president appeared approached by other leaders today in Brussels about his recent offer to extend French nuclear deterrence, and that he hopes. Russia views comments by President Emmanuel Macron about extending France's nuclear deterrent to other European countries as a threat. Confirmed his opposition to European forces being deployed in Ukraine if an accord was made to halt the conflict. President Zelensky, who was at the talks in Brussels, presented practical proposals to European and NATO leaders to end the war, starting with a ceasefire in the sky and at sea, including halting. The UK will continue to supply weapons to Ukraine, despite the Trump administration saying the US had stopped providing raw data, though in line with normal intelligence practice, it will not simply pass on US information obtained via long-established sharing arrangements between the two countries. Regional Governor Oleg Kieper has said that Russian forces launched a new mass drone attack on Ukraine's Black Sea port of Odessa late on Thursday, damaging energy infrastructure and triggering fires in the latest of what have become daily assaults on the city. Donald Trump has suggested imposing large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia following their missile and drone strikes across Ukraine. This marks his first critical statement on Russia since becoming president. The US has also halted intelligence sharing with Ukraine while Russia intensifies attacks, including targeting infrastructure and energy facilities. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has emphasized the country's commitment to peace talks, despite escalating military actions. The situation in Ukraine, there have been mixed reports on the battlefield, supposed Ukrainian successes in Toretsk and Chasiv Yar, claims from Ukrainian troops themselves that their logistics have been destroyed in Kursk and that they risk encirclement, and mixed reports from across with Russian Telegram channels saying that their attacks are running out of steam, have a shortage of manpower, and they're outnumbered by Ukrainian drones, yet Ukrainian reports are saying Russians are getting ever closer to Pokrovsk. So all quite confusing. I said Alan had been a strong voice for Ukraine, but he's more than a voice. It's not just talking the talk, it's walking the walk, or in this case, driving the drive. So Alan is just back from Ukraine, has provided us with some pictures. So please tell us about the pictures, your trip to Ukraine, why, and what you found when you were there, please.
Well, I've had a long association academic with Ukraine, and through that, one of my friends linked me up with an organization called Driving Ukraine. Very easy to find on the internet. Just key into your search engine, Driving Ukraine, and you'll find this wonderful organization. Groups of us sponsor purchase vans like this. It was a magnificent transit van with only about 85,000 miles on the clock, which I, and along with a Norwegian, you will see there was a Norwegian flag, drove to Ukraine. And on the Sunday morning, just last Sunday, I was standing here in front of a Belarusian that was killed fighting for the Belarusian regiment that is fighting with the Ukrainian army. That is the field of Mars in Lviv. Well over 1,000 graves that have appeared there in the last 3 years. And you can see not only Ukrainian flags, I saw some Georgian. And this is the sort of work academics are doing. That's the Lviv Polytechnic, and that's camouflage. Well, that one's not really camouflage netting. That's a Ukraine flag in camouflage netting, and in their sort of tea breaks, lunch breaks, academics. There's an academic making some of the camouflage netting. You can see they've got this stuff draped around the entrance hall. This is a sort of mobilization, and everybody just doing something for the war effort that you have in Ukraine. And that is the van I drove from Oxfordshire to Lviv, which was then driven by Trevor, that wonderful man on the right, passing over to an officer in the drone. You were talking about the drones, thousands of drones. That van is now on the front somewhere in eastern Ukraine, supporting a drone battalion. And you're probably aware Britain is really pushing in very large scale funding to enable support of drones. So drones were a great technology in Ukraine before the war. I worked with that same Polytechnic. You saw the netting. They were developing contemporary drone technology for delivery, just package delivery, particularly medical package delivery to remote areas. So the technology was all in place, and Ukrainians are hugely skilled engineers, computer scientists, technologists. In fact, Britain and Europe are more than happy if America wants to queer their pitch with collaborative trading and technological working, because Ukraine was set for an absolutely economic powerhouse recovery. The combination of wheat fields of Europe that is supplying grain to the world, so the agricultural side, but the human capital already was recognized, certainly by Europe, and you've seen just a little bit of it there, and that's the reason why in the technological war, in fact, there are big posters up in Ukrainian as you arrive outside Lviv, describing how this is an intellectual war, intellectualna wojna, and how Ukrainians are holding the line against all odds, and in some places pushing back just because of their masterful contemporary control of a new forms of technological warfare, and particularly the drone use really has been saving them, as well as in the early days the use of the anti-tank weapons. Anyway, enough for now.
No, I have one more question for you, Alan. I presume this is your first visit to Ukraine since the start of the Trump presidency, and I just wondered what the attitude of Ukrainians was.
Yes. We're broadcasting. I have to use polite words. But look, many Ukrainians, of course, over the years. I mean, I was at the university. Ukraine Aid was a great supporter, and the problem is, it's like the issue with the Russian people. The Ukrainians are not stupid enough to understand that the American people are many, possibly even the majority, actually, are really good friends of the democratic and the independence aspirations of Ukraine. It's the politics, and the problem is, though, if the politics pulls trade and aid agreements under the feet of Ukrainians, it's the trust in working with America that is going to take a huge amount of rebuilding now. So, if you're a Ukrainian, you're going to do a deal with Germany, France, or Britain, and America's in the queue there. I'm sorry for peaceful and good friends of Ukraine, but your leadership has completely taken the rug from underneath you for probably years to come now. The rebuilding of trust in America, something's going to have to turn around very quickly to save the position. I was talking to the leading chief executive of the Lviv Science Park, a wonderful man, Professor Podolchak. He also runs a tech startup school where a lot of drone development was on. He was a great friend of America, but getting projects where people now will trust any American engagement, that's really problematic. So what do they think? They think their old allies in Europe are going to save the day for them, and particularly the axis that is Poland, Ukraine, and the UK. So it was very good to be British, and even better to be Scottish in Ukraine in the last few few days, and I really feel sorry for any American visiting at the moment because they all get asked, how come? How did this happen? Sorry about that, Mark.
Oh, no.
Well, no, thank you. It's a very good introduction to Mark there. So I'm interested on the view from the United States on Trump cutting off military supplies and the intelligence reports. And the particularly barbaric thing, it seems, about cutting off the intelligence reports is that it hampers the Ukrainian knowledge of attacks on civilian targets. And I know he was asked by a journalist on the Charlie Kirk show today why he was not providing air defense to Kyiv, and he said, because I have to know they want to settle. So what is the view from your side of the Atlantic, and what do you feel that the general view, if there is such a thing, of the American people is? I mean, not the politicians, the man in the bar in Milwaukee.
Well, where do you begin on a topic like this? First off, you can go to any restaurant right now and order the Trump sandwich, which is white bread full of bologna with Russian dressing and a small pickle. And totally sarcastic, basically, to say, hey, we're not happy with this at all. And in fact, the approval ratings, I pulled up and looking at them for the last, since Bush Jr., it's nothing compared to it. The American people are right at this point they're not happy with what's going on, especially with abandoning Ukraine the way they did, with the altercation in the White House last week. But calling him a dictator and really not calling Putin out, there were red flags all the way across this. So the general population, we're flying Ukrainian flags all over. But he is making it, tit for tat. He wants money, and it's a very greedy situation. There's no way to justify it, but the poll numbers for him right now are down. For Trump 2, 45 approval, 51 disapprove, and that's a -6. Where you look back, even with George Bush in 2001, George Bush Jr., he had 55, 42. And it's like actually a 62-21 with a +41. So he had a higher approval rate in his first month. And it goes all the way across, all the way through Obama and Biden. And Trump, too, is the worst right now within a month. And a lot of people here are looking at, like, how fast did Germany fall? It was like 53 days. Well, we've made a dramatic change in this country in that short period of time. I mean, 80,000 people getting laid off, and it's not a very pleasant atmosphere all the way across. In regards to the Ukraine, people really, the bulk of America really would like and still wants to support them because they understand why they're even doing this, because of the Budapest Agreement and the United States buying the missiles years ago and saying we're going to offer support for them in any case. But then it's now turned into this, well, Zelensky didn't help out Trump getting information on Joe Biden, and he was going to hold off support years ago. And our Trump 2.0 basically is like the vengeance tour. He's taking it out on U.S. veterans. He's taking it out on our allies, anybody that didn't cooperate with him, and he relies on the word chaos.
I have another question to ask you. Trump was interviewed today, another interview, and he said that Ukraine was going to make a deal because they had to. And he also said that Russia wants to make a deal for reasons that only Trump knows. The Kyiv Independent asked John Foreman, who's the former UK defense attaché in Moscow, what he thought Trump meant by that. He was very honest and said, not a clue. Have you any insights to what Trump means by that?
Not a clue. It changes from moment to moment. His goals are basically change. He's like a 10-year-old kid that is losing at a game of checkers and flips the checkerboard. And so we play it day by day. He does consume our media, and it is everybody can't keep up because it's like grenades every single day. Which story do you follow? And so you're chasing one, and it's like, oh, I didn't call Zelensky a dictator, did I? And it's like, hold it, yes, you did. But in regards to any type of aid especially we were talking earlier in regards to cutting off the information flow. He's pushing his hand saying, well, Zelensky doesn't want to go ahead and have peace, so we can't help him. So basically, he's just backing out. And it's the easiest thing to do. And that's kind of like my personal view is that's why he did the ambush at the White House, because he goes, see, he doesn't want to have peace. Why should we help?
A final quick question there on Trump. Looking from the UK, it seems that the Democrats are in a state of disorder. They're not really providing a meaningful opposition to him. Is that your view? And is there anyone who can from the United States to Trump?
Well, I agree that the Democrats are definitely in disorder at this point in time, because I think either they're going to let him burn himself out, like James Carville said, let them go and see what happens, because sooner or later there's going to be major pushback, especially with all the firings that Doge is doing and all the cuts that are going on. And it's going to trickle down to the basic base, the old MAGA base that's inherited the Republican Party. And Democrats right now they're trying to regroup, but I think they're going to be relying more on the population of the United States, because the protests are really picking up. I mean, they're protesting in New York, Chicago, all over the place. Tesla sales are down. There is just an absolute pushback that is going on in the streets, and these protests are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So you're looking at a country that's really divided at this point in time. And I think in just, talking to my other Democratic friends that I know, and they go, hey, we're just going to let them go for another 30 days and see what happens, because it's going to totally spin out of control and they're going to blow themselves up, because at one point, the Republicans at this point cannot even do their town halls because they're getting deluged with people going, what is going on? And the Republicans are saying it's the Democrats that are going to these town halls, where it's actually both Republican and Democrats. So you've seen like 40 people going to a town hall. Now it's 200 people showing up at these things. And they've actually said, well, we're going to stop doing town halls because we feel that we're being infiltrated by the Democratic Party. It's like, no, this is the general population of the country that is speaking out. And you can tell by on the street vibe in the major cities, people will write their messages in shoe polish on the car. Like the old bumper stickers and stuff saying your allegiance, they'll write their personal messages on there, or they'll fly Ukrainian flags, and we support it. And you're seeing more and more cars doing this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I just come in on one in response to your query about Trump's, what Trump has on Putin, why he thinks he wants to settle? The last few weeks, it's been quite widely discussed in London, the issue of Russia's economic, financial position. Although he might have China at his back to some extent, there clearly are internal issues. We have to remember it was the defense spending that essentially creaked and brought down the Soviet Union through the 80s. And Trump is burning with a massive, I forget what the percentages are, it's way over 10%. So probably somewhere in the 10 to 20% range of his GDP on defense, on the war, massive war spending. That is having its toll. Now, the Russian people are very robust, but at the end of the day, he's still got to keep the money flowing to keep this machine going. And there will be analysts, and I mean, Mark will know better than I do, there will still people who will be whispering or getting the key words into Trump's head. And the very fact we got an outburst about, I'm going to go for the sanctions, switch the banks off, go for the money flows. That maybe links in with this, that if anything is going, and it's not a case that Ukraine has no cards and Trump and Putin has them all. It is quite clear Putin does have his own internal problems, coupled with the fact he's had to run this war by recruiting individuals from the regions, trying to keep Moscow and the elites out of the war as much as possible. And that there's a limit to how long that can last. He knows he can't have issues there. And I'm wondering if what Trump thinks he knows but others don't really is the economic angle. I don't know, Mark may have a brief comment on that thought.
Yeah, Alan, currently the United States is kind of separated from its neighbors now. We've alienated Canada, we've alienated Mexico, and now we've alienated all of our allies that we've established through NATO. And even the thought of pulling out of NATO is absolutely absurd. It's kind of like Captain America leaving the Avengers. You know, oh, who are we going to fight? They can't go ahead and inflict the #5 mandate. So we've isolated our entire country. And Zelensky said it best. Yes, you've got two oceans, but sooner or later it's going to get to you. And that means, and he was so right in saying that. When you don't even have to analyze it, is that we've separated ourselves. And here, most of the people do not understand what tariffs really are. And they're quick. There's a thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you give somebody just a little bit of knowledge and they think they know everything. It's part of their psyche. And we have a lot of people here that have the Dunning-Kruger effect. Tariffs, tax, save, good. No, it's not good. You're going to be paying for it. And right now, the prices at the supermarkets are just unbelievable. I mean, I bought 3 items today and it was like $14 and it was not even big items. So, I mean, eggs, $12. But you know, these sanctions are not going to work in our favor at all. We have now created a trade war. In regards to the military, you know, Russia's enterprise originally is military. That's how they kept their machine going. Look at all the invasions they've done throughout the decades, and then we're saying we're going to trust them. Well, the recent Harris poll still says 96% of Americans do not trust Putin. So basically, even by doing what's going on, it's totally against what the population of the United States is standing for.
Wow. Well, I know there were polling errors statistically, but 4% trust them? I would not like to be dealing with them. But Alan's point there of, yes, there's economic pressure on Putin, perfectly plausible, though I don't know why Trump would think that he's the only person who knows that. I mean, even I know that, but maybe that's just Trump. Sadly, the next thing I want to move on to is still President Trump, and that's the State of the Union speech in this past week, which was really eye-opening in what I have always perceived as being something which is to bring America together, one nation indivisible, and all that good stuff. And this was a partisan gunfight. And you're talking, Mark, about alienating neighbors as threats to Panama, Canada, and Greenland. I don't know if either of you saw the interview that Christian Amanpour had on CNN with Melanie Joly, the Canadian foreign minister. And Madame Joly said, we have to defend ourselves from the United States. And Christian Amanpour, who has seen a lot in her distinguished journalistic career, said, you know, my jaw has really dropped hearing that from Canada speaking about the United States. And of course, we have very strong ties with Canada in Scotland, and that so many of our people have gone over there and through the Commonwealth. So what is your take on what Trump did in his State of the Union speech, Alan?
Regrettable. You know, watching the bipartisan split, there was not even one Democrat standing, and the Republicans constantly cheering. It was astounding because I've never in my lifetime, at least, there were situations where both parties were standing in unison applauding the missions and goals, and to see nothing but sitting there the entire time. And I would not like to have fact checked, which I did afterwards, the entire speech, all 100 minutes, the longest one ever recorded for a United States president ever to accomplish. But I guess Trump likes to go ahead and break all records. But it didn't have any it was nothing good for anybody. And I know exactly what you're talking about, Douglas, in regards to Canada. And at this point, even today, I watched several interviews of people there saying that they're finding alternate ways to get rid of our products here in the States. So that's going to be crippling our businesses. At the same time, all those tariffs that Trump was going to put on, he's walking back at this point in time. He's still allowing some of them to go through, but it's still going to be impacting not only our economy, but Canada's too. But I'm sure the average American person doesn't realize how much we rely, and as our trade goes back and forth, on these two countries. And it's not getting in an argument with your brother or sister. This is world powers. So you just don't call up the phone going, "Hey, Trudeau, I'm sorry. Oh, let's be friends again." No, it's harsh. And my Canadian friends are saying it's hard to forgive. It's hard to forgive at this point in time. And as long as he's in power, we're going to maintain the situation of finding our own goods, so we don't have to become reliant on the United States.
Yeah,
yeah, it seems to be that way. Yeah, go on, Alan. I was going to ask you what your views.
I did watch this. I made sure that I was able to watch this live. I was on the Polish-Ukraine border, just on the Polish side. 6-hour time difference. It was 3 a.m, and the wonderful Polish broadcast organization TV Poland, they do a world service in English. So we got that. And my lasting memory, Mark may remember this, was there was a shot turned to Nancy Pelosi near the beginning. And the lady looked like she was almost in tears at what was happening in a State of the Union speech, and everything that Mark's pointed out. That I've watched a number of these with a fascination for American politics, and that clear polarization that was in there in the House, including even the gentleman who was heckling. There was a colored gentleman at the beginning. I don't know enough about American politics to know who he was. Sorry? Yes, Al Green apparently was shaking his stick. I mean, there are very high emotions, all this, and we won't go into the details of the fact check, but I actually thought, if anything, the Democrats were incredibly restrained in having to deal with sweeping statements about the ineffectiveness of their last 4 years, which defied belief and would be part of the fact check problem. The fact that they probably couldn't have the direction of Nancy Pelosi. I've never forgotten the power that Nancy Pelosi had over the House, the Senate there. The little wiggle of the finger if she wanted to keep everybody quiet. Well, I think she was fairly too emotional to perhaps want to direct it. Why don't you all just stand up and make some protest against this? I think the politeness was directly contrasting of the Democrats, and the very fact that I've never seen the numbers clear so quickly as Trump went out, an absolutely vacant one half of the room, and the other with the cheering supporters. I mean, I was obviously listening closely for the piece on Ukraine, which was, of course, nothing new in the position where we were. That was actually Tuesday night, moving into early Wednesday morning. It was 3 a.m. Polish time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We watched this, so we're now talking about the news as it was, and that is the one big problem, because already I do sense, and Mark maybe will help us out with this, it does seem to be a softening, possibly because he's managed to get Zelensky to Saudi Arabia in some way, but there's been a little bit of a softening there, but there's all sorts of complexities about this minerals deal, which we are watching very closely. I think he's going to discover that Ukrainians are very, very sharp, intelligent European people. And I'm sorry to say this, Mark, but when I first arrived in Eastern Europe, Belarus, the worst thing that was happening was that there was a huge inferiority complex that was almost induced by some Americans, particularly the business people who arrived. And I was working in Belarus at that time, and the rector, and this is an intellectual, bright nuclear physicist professor, pulled me aside and said, "Alan, we do appreciate your British approach. We have some people who come here and think we are monkeys that have just dropped out of the trees. Nobody should treat Ukrainians as monkeys that have just dropped out of the trees. They are no easy pushover, and I fear that there is all too much of a misunderstanding of the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian culture, the Ukrainian human resource in whoever is advising. I mean, at least Mr. Trump plays golf in Scotland. You would have thought he would have at least met a few of the many Polish people we have in this country to get a bit whispered about Eastern Europe, and seen the very European orientation of Scotland, amongst which he enjoys holidaying so much. I just wish we could have bent his ear a bit more and got him introduced to a few Ukrainians. It might have shifted his position. So,
well, I wonder, Alan, if it's not just Ukrainians. If it's not just Ukrainians he takes that attitude to, and that's why I was so interested by the response in Canada, which is, as I said, a country Scotland has very, very close links with.
Yes.
Did he underestimate the Canadians and their response? And Mark spoke a little there about that they're starting to knock back American goods, that Jack Daniels is off the shelves. British Columbia is talking about imposing a cost for truckers going through to Alaska. And I don't know who said it, but it was pretty good. They said Canada has got two modes: sorry, and you're going to be sorry.
You're going to be sorry.
Yeah. Can I make one point about the Ukraine link? Very important. Canada's been bankrolling Ukraine for years. It's one of Lviv. I've just come to a city where the Canadian dollar is the top of the exchange lists there. You see the GB pound fairly close and the American dollar hanging around there. But yeah, there's a double whammy. Canadians not happy about the treatment of Ukraine either.
No. And again, I'd like to thank both of you guys for having me on. And here is something I'd like to thank the entire country of Scotland, is flying that inflatable Trump balloon with diapers and stuff when he was doing in your protests on the 0.1 version of that. I thought it was hilarious and very unique. So thank you from my heart. But back to the State of the Union address at this point. There was a lot of really interesting things. It's like they gave this kid who had brain cancer, a survivor of brain cancer, like CIA or a Secret Service or something, or FBI agent. And at the same time, Doge and Trump cut all cancer research. So it's like, hold it. You're celebrating it at the same time. You just cut the cancer research that's going to be helping. So it's all, it's like, it's projection. Say, here's what I say, but here's really what I'm doing. And for our neighbors and our allies, it's not going to play very well.
Indeed. And the final part that I'd like to deal with tonight of treatment of allies is that Trump is talking about not honouring Article 5 of the NATO agreement, whereby an attack on one member is an attack on all, and all others are obliged to support the attacked country. And of course, it has only been invoked once in the history of NATO, and that was after the 9/11 attacks in New York, and everyone came to the United States aid in that case. First of all, what should we make of it in Europe, and not forgetting Canada? And has the response so far announced by the European Union and by individual countries been enough? And I'll start with you, Alan.
Good.
Well, it's scary that we're having to talk in Britain about boosting our tactical nuclear weapons. Thankfully, France and Britain have a nuclear deterrent, because it's quite clear that the plans are having to be made for the fact America might not come in. Now, there is more to the special relationship than just the buzzword. I'm a nuclear physicist. I've been in this game since the 80s, and I'm very aware that a British nuclear weapon is really just an American one with a British flag on it, as opposed to an American flag, essentially. We have been close in defense and security for decades now, and you don't unravel that easily. It is a massive industrial defense. But on the other hand, or maybe that's only talking about the material. At the end of the end, there's the political decision, what's used and when, in terms of the huge arsenal that the United States has. But there is no doubt there is a deterrent capability in Europe. There is a very scary piece of land between Belarus and Kaliningrad. We've got to remember that Russia's got this little enclave that was a bit of the old Prussia on the Baltic, and that's Russian. And he's also got control of Belarus, a country I'm very, very closely involved with. It's definitely going to need to be dealt with in any peace negotiations to assure its independence. But there is a real worry that if Putin's to go for anything, he will maybe try and go for that bit of Poland. And then what do we all do? Do we have enough deterrence in place? Britain's had military in Estonia as a tripwire, basically saying there's NATO forces in the Baltics since 2014. And we've got to remember this war has been going on in Ukraine since 2014, essentially. It's been 11 years nearly. Article 5 was very important in that. The position for Russia was that they knew until recently, you go in and do something in Estonia or Latvia, and you got the full weight of America in there and the full weight of NATO. Now that is not the case now. So it's we're living, as I think we all know and can agree, in a much riskier world. And as a young man who was using his nuclear physics in the Cold War period, and all too aware and close to the nuclear issue, and ended up in Belarus because of civil nuclear power going very wrong in a very Soviet way, the Chernobyl reactor. I do find it very chilling that we got this. The politicians, our peers, my generation, our generation, probably, Mark.
Right.
We really have messed up big time for the young generation. Maybe we should just end with a huge big apology. Sorry, we clearly, both of us, have tried our best, but somehow in this present era we're not in the majority.
It falls on
Mark, I'm interested in your view. Article 5 was just a basic part of European politics, and Trump may have a valid argument in saying that it was used in Europe to reduce defense spending below a level which was needed because there was this dependence on the United States, and Europe seems to be waking up to that. But I just wonder, is Article 5 a thing at all in the United States, or is this just something which people are talking about now because Trump has mentioned it?
No, I think everybody understands that Article 5, and that's why we're in NATO, especially after 9/11. And I was in New York when 9/11 did happen, not at Ground Zero or anything else. I was traveling up to Connecticut at that point. But it was sitting there going, what is going on? You could see the thing, the airspace being changed and everything behind, and then realizing, wow, and the rest of the world is chiming in to help. Now, with our separation with Canada and with Mexico and with UK, we're alone. So yeah, are we aligning ourselves with Russia and China? That's what everybody right now is going, hold it. We were on the Avengers side now we're Captain America pulling our way away from the table. What are we doing here? This is not what we stand for. I mean, we didn't go through the Cold War prior to this. We didn't go through the Cuban Missile Crisis. We haven't Georgia and all these other places, and then all of a sudden we're friends, and now we're not helping with Article 5. We're not going to be a part of this. Everybody's pretty confused at this point in time, and they're not in agreement with it at all.
No, it was interesting. I mean, talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis, Khrushchev at one point said, "We'll take America without firing a shot. It will destroy itself from the inside," and it kind of looks that way at the moment.
That's exactly it, Doug. That's the way a lot of us feel. Is like it's already had that tipping point. Back with the elections in 2017, it was like 2016. It's with the collusion going on, and then recently we stopped all of our cyber security with Russia. We've stopped a lot of the spy situations or the intelligence. So it's like, what are we doing? And then you're actually watching how to dismantle an entire country within 90 days.
Well, if I get this put into an appeal, Mark, if you've got any noise you can make, the one thing my Ukraine friends are shocked and horrified, and it really, really has hurt last night, and that is they need the American intelligence. They really genuinely, the information where the rocket launchers was, where the aircraft and all that stuff, that hurt people just last night. And Lviv, a city that normally isn't under an attack, it was something like 3.5 hours. It was from 4 a.m. till 7:30. They were under air raid, and I've got friends there, so I follow this. And they're saying, for goodness sake, what is American doing? This genuinely is leading to Ukrainians dying and further destruction. That is so. In days, we've got to see a turnaround on that. I can't believe that the people who work in the British Ministry of Defence, that what must be going on between London and the Pentagon, our Ministry of Defence and the Pentagon. I mean, I'm sure there are very good Americans in the Pentagon who also are tearing their hair out saying, we'll see what we can do. And let's hope that there is I've got some faith that I hope the power of your US military is going to have a powerful enough voice somehow in that Oval Office to get this turned around. But maybe you're closer to who's talking to who in these days. I just can't believe this can be sustained. I mean, we've had absolutely an example of how quick Putin can take advantage. And it was referenced, I was watching at 5 o'clock British time. What was it? That was, it must have been about midday then in East Coast time, was it, when he made that press conference today. Quite alarming. I don't know, can I throw a comment? Do you mind on that?
Yes. Alan, wasn't the hometown of Zelensky hit on the latest raids?
Yes, yes. Yeah, very quickly. Yeah. Yes,
so
yes, exactly. Yes.
It's more of a psychological thing in this warfare. It's like we're cutting off the intelligence, then we're attacking your own hometown, so you're going to bow to us. So this is a psychological...
but they've got the capability to take out the energy infrastructure now. It's been very, very well defended, and USA intelligence has been feeding in, and they got they need the shells. The Patriot, your Patriot system has really, really saved so many lives and so much infrastructure, and the intelligence that goes with it. So I'm speaking to Ukrainians. I mean, just come back. They were really scared what was going to happen, and it happened. I just got home to Edinburgh last night and I woke up this morning to find out, for goodness sake, they've taken advantage. And Trump almost seemed to know that, but this is not the way to bring. Zelensky is coming to the negotiating table. Now, I hope, just like he relaxed the sanctions, the tariffs on Canada, I'm looking forward to, in hours, hopefully, the return of the intelligence work. I hope you're on the phone.
One final question for you, Mark. And that is, Alan was saying, you hope there were some voices in the Pentagon trying to improve this. I was struck by the words of General Mark Milley in Trump's first term when he said the military's allegiance is not to the president, it's to the Constitution. Would there be voices in the military being raised against Trump and even questions about his competence and loyalty?
He's changed out the entire cabinet to his individuals. They're basically yes men. Basically, we are in an oligarchy, and dictatorship is not too far away. I mean, the people that he's put into the cabinet are literally a laughingstock, and they have no business really being there. They don't comprehend their actions or moves, and dictation from Trump is the way it's going. So technically, we are almost in a dictatorship at this point in time, where you're banning AP and Reuters out of the White House for freedom of speech because they wouldn't call it the Gulf of America, and they get banned out of the White House or going on any of the press tours or on Air Force One, is controlling of the media. But overall, it's the old feed a cold, starve a fever kind of scenario. He's trying to starve people out. He's being a bully. And it comes to the point where he was telling somebody, you know what a bully is? It's somebody that's weak. And that shows you he doesn't even have the self-awareness to even understanding he was bullying somebody while doing that. You know? So,
okay, well, thank you very much to both of you. And that's it for this evening's Scotland at 7. Thank you very much to my guests, Alan Flowers in Edinburgh and Mark Thompson for the first time for us, and I hope not the last time, in Milwaukee, giving us an American view on things, which was fascinating. Before I go, I just want to remind you that at Broadcasting Scotland, we depend on the generosity of our supporters. To everyone who has donated and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, thank you very much. We were £16,000 short of our funding requirements in 2024, which has left us short of the money we need to pay our bills. We face costs of over £4,000 every month, but only receive donations of around £2,500. We urgently need to raise at least £8,000 to pay our bills now. Our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you can afford £5 a month, please consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. And please, donate whatever you can afford. So thank you again to our guests tonight. Thank you at home or wherever you are for watching, or if you're watching on catch up. Please join us again on Broadcasting Scotland for our review of the week's news, the full Scottish, on Sunday. And please use Blue Sky to comment. You can do it during the programmes, you can do it after the programmes, but we'd like to know what you think. But for me, Douglas MacKenzie, goodbye, good night, and thank you for watching.